Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice of radio. So today, I thought it might be fun to tell you what the best decks in Japan are right now. Now, to be fair, these come from the lovely Tunu1223 over on Twitter, a great source of information, and they have shared with us some nice information all about, well, it was actually an expanded extra format, which is the expanded format, that being black and white on, but it does mean that essentially the cards are unbanned. So, well, not all of the cards, some of the cards are unbanned. So you can use Hex Maniac, if you so wish, to block abilities, which of course with Versus Seeker is crazy good. You can still use Wally to get your turn 1 Trevenant and other Pokemon. That's very important. More on that in a moment. You can still use Puzzle of Time to recover stuff, so Zoroark is extremely happy. And you can still use Getsis to basically get rid of all your opponent's items turn 1. Now, 221-223 does not specifically mention Archeops, so I'm assuming that is still banned, that being the one that stops you evolving, because you can use it with Maxie's turn 1, and that does make sense. And then, obviously, we're still not seeing Lysander's trump card. That one's gone away, ladies and gentlemen. It's too gosh darn broken, allowing you to just grab your entire discard back. It makes Seismitoad way too broken. I did make a video about why that was banned. I'll try and remember to pop a link in the description. So we're talking black and white on, our own expanded format, just with a few extra cards popped in. So according to Tunu1223, what was the top 8 comprised of? Well, the most prevalent deck in the top 8 was Buzzroc Lycanroc. So even though we're in the expanded format, and even though we've got all these extra cards which have been banned in our expanded format over in US, Europe, UK, etc., the number one deck is just Buzzroc Lycanroc. Now, obviously, the big difference in expanded is that you have strong energy, allowing you to do an extra 20 damage for your attacks. You still have Diancie Prism Star, allowing you to do an extra 20. Don't sleep on the fact that Corinna is in the expanded format, so you can use that to search for an item card and a fighting Pokemon. And I don't know if they would, but you could also play Focus Sash to guarantee your opponent doesn't get a one-hit KO. But other than strong energy, the main facets of the deck are still the same. You've still got both Baby Buzz Haynek and regular Buzzwole, both of which hit very hard, although in Japan they have been tending to lean more towards the GX. You've still got Beast Ring to accelerate energy when your opponent's got 3 or 4 prizes remaining. You've still got Diancie Prism Star to do extra damage. You're still hitting weakness on stuff like Zoroark. You are still very much smashing. And I mean, that's very much like what we would expect in a standard tournament over in the US. I mean, if we look, for instance, at the Memphis Regional Championship, the last big regional in the US, Buzzroc Lycanroc was half of the top 8. 4 of the top 8 in Memphis was Buzzroc Lycanroc, and then we end up in Japan, in expanded, with some cards unbanned, and we still see Buzzroc Lycanroc being the best represented deck. The deck is a powerhouse. But we also saw 2 copies of Rayquaza GX. Now, I don't have deck lists for these, unfortunately. That's a lie, I have one. But not for Rayquaza. And in Rayquaza, I'm assuming we're looking at the World list, which is to say you just play Max Elixir and you go for pure unadulterated speed, the same deck with which Pedro Eugenio Torres went and got top 4 at the World Championships. It's kind of over the top good. The one that I predicted was going to be amazing, and then everyone went, oh, it's not going to be that good, Ross. And then as it turns out, it was in fact that good, and was the most represented deck in the top cut of the World Championships, and made top 4 at the World Championships. As far as I'm concerned, if it's the most represented deck in the top cut, probably meant it had a good showing. It's not been as good since we hit the rotation. People are playing it with stuff like Vikavolt, and that's good, But it's a stage 2, it's lost a step, it doesn't quite have the same consistency it had around the World Championships. And the real big difference, as far as I'm concerned here, is Max Elixir. Now, Hex Maniac also really helps here, because Rayquaza can be beaten by some ability decks, whereas the chance here with Rayquaza to just sit there smashing while constantly ability locking your opponent, it's just really good. It just works, ladies and gentlemen. It's a lot of fun. We also saw 2 copies of Trevenant Break, and at this stage I should mention this is the deck which actually went and won the whole thing. You got Wally back. To be perfectly honest with you, you've got Wally. So you use Wally. If you go first, drop a Wally, and don't forget you can search it with Tapu Lele. And then you have a turn 1 Trevenant, and your opponent is locked out of trainers, items, for the entire game before they've even had a chance to draw a card. Even if you don't go first and get the turn 1 lock, you've got Phantump. So obviously, if you go first and miss the Wally, you can just evolve turn 2. But if you go second, you're going to get the Phantump, because Ascension for 1 colourless energy lets you search your deck for Trevenant, evolve up, then your opponent is ability locked going into their turn. But even if you don't want to use the energy, you've got Dimension Valley, which is a little bit over the top. Then you add in Trevenant Break, that for a single Psychic Energy, presuming you've got Dimension Valley on the field, drops 3 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. Maybe people are playing Machamp from Guardians Rising to prevent it. They're not. But maybe people are playing Machamp to prevent it. Oh, that would be fun, wouldn't it? Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, it's not being played. It's very sad. But Trevenant is still winning. And the deck that won with Trevenant, it's a fairly standard Trevenant list. Obviously, we do see a copy of Getsis, and we'll probably have a full look at the list in a future video, but quite frankly, it's Trevenant. You just evolve up, you spread damage, you win because your opponent can't access the game. There's a very good reason why Wally was banned. And unfortunately, it's back. Or fortunately, depends if you like playing as Trevenant or not, to be perfectly honest with you. But the other deck, and this makes me so happy, Glaceon Crobat. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Top 8 at an expanded tournament in Japan, with all these unbanned cards coming out, was Glaceon GX and Crobat. I'm so happy about this. Now, unfortunately, I do not have the deck list, but what I do know that it's going to be the Crobat from Fates Collide. You've obviously got the Golbat. When you evolve up, you get to drop 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. It's basically the same ability as Frogadier and Greninja from Forbidden Light. Which is weird, right? Because when they're revealed, I'm like, oh, it's the same ability as Crobat. But now there are newer players that are going to look at the old Crobat and go, oh, that's just like Greninja. Weird how circular that goes. You evolve up into Crobat, you drop 3 damage counters on your opponent, and then you got all kinds of tricks like Ace Roller, like Scoop Up Cyclone, like Super Scoop Up, etc. that you can use to pick up these Pokemon so you can reuse the ability over and over and over and over again. Plus, it's got free retreat, and for 1 colourless energy, you can do 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. That's fine, but you don't want to be attacking with it, because you don't want it in the active, because you want Glaceon in the active. Glaceon's got an ability whereby your opponent cannot use any abilities on EX or GX Pokemon. But we've got the Energy Evolution Eevee, which means you can get this up and rolling turn 1 going first, get Eevee into the active, attach a water energy, search your deck, boom, there we go. So actually here, this is working quite beautifully indeed. And then it locks your opponent. I mean, we looked at the other decks in top 8. We said that the number 1 here was basically Buzzroc Lycanroc. Well, Buzzroc doesn't do much to Crobat. Glaceon locks your Lycanroc out of the game. That seems pretty nice to me. Rayquaza GX loses its ability, which is quite good. Admittedly, Trevenant Break won't get such a huge advantage off of this. But it's consistency cards like Tapu Lele. Your opponent has no access to Tapu Lele here. And bearing in mind, if you go first and get this up turn 1, your opponent has no Tapu Lele for the entire game. They have no Shaman for the entire game, and they're the big consistency cards in Expanded. I really like this. This seems fun to me. This seems like a very interesting series of decks that make up a very interesting format. It's not surprising that Trevenant is still an amazing deck once you give us access to Wally again, but it might be a little bit surprising that Buzzroc with Lycanroc is still so gosh darn good, even bearing in mind that we're in a different format with unbanned cards and all of that. Alrighty then, that will about do for today, ladies and gentlemen. So, I want to know what you think about this. Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, but please do remember to be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do make sure you're checking out my other channel, Wassy Plays, where we talk Dragon Ball, Transformers, video games, all that fun stuff. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.